Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Journey On, the podcast. I'm Ben Sanguinetti, and this is my good friend Nate Jones. And I'm going to give it over to you, Nate, and let's jump into a little meditation to start off the podcast.
All right, cool. Thanks, Ben. And thanks, everyone, for being here. Actually, really, truly, thanks. Really, truly. So we'll just start off with a little easy breathing meditation, just to check in here in the present moment. And connecting with your breath and your body is a really easy way to connect with the present moment. So if you're able to, go ahead and close your eyes. If you're doing something that requires your vision, then just keep your eyes open. But whatever you're doing, I invite you just to follow a couple breaths. So if you want, it could be deep breaths. If you want, it could be just kind of easy, medium, relaxed breaths. Or you could just simply notice how your body is breathing. So really relaxed to do that. And it's really such a simple thing, just following your breath. The simplest things are the most powerful things. And they're also usually the most subtle things. And so by following your breath, following the breath in, and following the breath out, you're making the very subtle action of not thinking, stepping outside of your thinking mind. And that truly is the most powerful and transformative thing that you can do for yourself and the entire world. So just keep it really simple. Just follow 3 more breaths. And just feeling your body relax. Feeling your body let go of any tension or guarding. 1 more breath. And then to finish it off, kind of after we melt away some of the exterior tension, a heartbeat might start to emerge. You might start to just be able to sense your heart beating. And then just honoring this energy inside of you that's absolutely unbelievable. And that's keeping you here. And in doing so, just recognizing the fullness of this moment, the fullness of life. Alright, then let's take 1 breath in together. Let's take a nice deep breath in through your nose. Fill up your chest, fill up your belly, all the way up to your throat. Hold the breath, and then try to relax everything around the breath. And then open the mouth, and then just sigh the breath out. Alright, thank you guys. So if you want to, open your eyes. If you want to, go ahead and follow your breath for the whole episode. We have a pretty cool topic today, and I know that Ben has just like this amazing story about it, and he's super jazzed to talk about it, so I'm just gonna let him just take the mic.
Thank you, man. Thank you for that. That was an amazing meditation. So topic today is addiction and how we could turn it into a blessing, which is what I've done ultimately. So I am an addict. I'm really proud to say that today. It's been a journey to get here, of course, but I wouldn't change anything at all. So my choice of poison for most of my life was food. And I definitely later on dabbled with some alcohol and some minor drugs here and there. But I always went back to food. And I started using food for comfort when I was really little. Um, I shared in the last episode, if you haven't had a chance to check it out, in Journey on number 2 episode, I spoke about how I'm very dyslexic and it was really hard for me to deal with that growing up. So that in itself to help me, or that in itself made me try to cope with something right away. As young as about 6, 7 years old, when I first was really diagnosed and starting to actually understand something was wrong with me. Um, and The person I am today, I'm about 150 pounds lighter than where I was before. And how I was before is I would always, I mentioned I always would go back to food. And I would always find excuses to not do the work of not just losing the weight, but looking what really was bothering me, and what was eating me up inside. And a perfect example of just kind of how my mind would work and the path I would go down is one of my favorite stories now, but not so favorite back then, is there was one point in my life before I really hit rock bottom, you could say. I was starting to work out again. I was doing decent. I went like a good solid 3 weeks of gym every day, hitting the elliptical, doing everything I needed to do. Well, right next to the gym, there was a pizza place. And so after like 3 weeks went by, I decided, oh man, now's a treat for myself. I'm going to go hit up that pizza joint after I went to the gym. And how I would start spiraling out of control from there is, believe it or not, I started going to the gym. Or when I started with going to that gym, right away, every time I'm going into that gym, I would see that pizza place and I would just start thinking about it right away. So another week went by, and before I knew it, without even thinking about it, I would skip the gym and just grab pizza. So that's kind of, a quick recap of how my addictive mind and personality would work when it came to everything. When I started actually losing weight is when I started looking inside more of what was really bothering me, which, the big trauma in my life was dyslexia, and having that pain of, not being smart enough, good enough, all those things that were just beliefs about myself that aren't really true. I owe a lot of credit to a 12-step program, but to stay mainly on topic of the biggest blessing of mine is having the understanding of my subconscious mind, where I really come from, and who I am today ultimately. And how I look at it now is when we're not in control of how we feel, our emotions, our feelings, and everything that goes into that, that's when everything goes out of control and we look for comfort. And that's what I was always doing. So if it wasn't food, at some point it was alcohol, at some point it was minor drugs. And I'm really lucky compared to a lot of other people that don't have that same story and do really hard drugs and do alcohol a lot worse than I did. And for me today, the only reason why I don't necessarily have a problem with alcohol, but I just made a choice to stay away from it because I do have family history behind it. And because of the way my special brain works, it's just not a good idea that I do that. But how I've kind of harnessed that control is I take that addictive personality, that addictive mindset, and I put it on anything that I'm doing, no matter what it is. My job, my relationship, if I'm going to school, if I'm reading a book, and I put that addictive mindset into it to accomplish everything that I'm doing. And so that's why I ultimately say the way I'm programmed, the way I've done everything, now that I'm clean, I truly have this blessing a part of my life now, that my tics, the way I work, the way my brain works, it's absolutely amazing. And it just goes to show that when we harness energy, when we harness a focus, when we harness a belief, when we harness who we are, we can accomplish anything that our heart desires. And it's the out of control perspective that makes me view the world a lot differently today, that really has made me realize that we're addicted to a lot of different things. Everywhere you look, somebody's addicted to something, whether it be their phone, the computer screen. They're addicted to bad relationships. They're addicted to good relationships sometimes. At the end of the day, they don't have balance. And that's what I was always lacking, and kind of what I have found now, that, believe me, I'm not perfect. I have to keep working on it constantly and check into my programs and within myself to get where I am today and to stay that way. But with that being said, I'm going to give it over back to you, Nate, and just talk on that a little bit more.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Ben. Um, yeah, that story, about the gym and the pizza place is just so good on so many levels. I mean, like, it's like the universe was tempting you, and like it just really shows like how like sly and persistent the mind is. And I love that you said there that you were talking about the energy of addiction. And so like the, the, that you could describe addiction in so many ways, but one way you can describe it is that when like some craving or something has enough power over you that you can't not do it, like you have to go and do it, and you really feel like there's this power over you that's controlling what you do. And an addiction shows you the power of the unconscious mind. And the unconscious mind is when the mind has control over us, which is how most of the world has been living for centuries. And that's, starting to change now. I mean, obviously, because Ben and I are doing this podcast and you're listening to this podcast, and just all the spiritual teachers out there and all the yoga and what have you. But like Ben said, his addictions have showed him the power of that energy and how powerful the mind actually is. So then when we learn how to work with the mind, then we can place the mind on other tasks, and we can like achieve incredible things we never thought was possible. So yeah, I really like that you said that there. And that's one of the main things I think about looking back at, like, the mistakes that we made. I mean, in some form or another, it's probably because there's like some craving or like some desire that gripped us so much and moved us in this direction. And that just kind of shows you how powerful it is. And if you learn to work with that energy, that energies inside of you and the energies that come to you and can move through you, well then, wow, you can definitely do like super amazing things. And then also what you were saying, so you started to eat a lot as a result for you to cope with your dyslexia. So like, another way to talk about addiction is that it's just simply adaptive behavior. Like, we don't know what to do, we're like suffering, we're feeling horrible or whatever, so we like look for the easiest way out and the closest thing. And for, I mean, a lot of people, that's food. I mean, like, I definitely have, it's funny that you were talking about that did you mention that you were 150 pounds overweight? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just like the really cool to know somebody, that's like been on that path, and then like after you drop the weight, then you really really just like kept going, and you like went way deeper inside, which like I want you to talk about later on.
Yeah.
But when we're operating out of the unconscious mind, we're basically in survival mode. So like, all the decisions and stuff that we make out of that mode, the main motivation is to not die. So that's fear. If I'm trying to not die, then that's fear. And when we're working out of the unconscious mind, that's basically all of our decisions, are out of that. So it's like this thing that's making me so uncomfortable and is like, that creating a lot of frustration and suffering in my life, that for you it was your dyslexia. It's like, how can I get out of that as quickly as possible? So like, honestly, your addiction was helping you. It was helping you to get out, of that suffering from the dyslexia. So like, really it was there to protect us. But again, when we act out of the unconscious mind, it just will lead to like, more problems over here and then more problems over there. It's like if you dig up dirt over here, you're just going to put the dirt over there. So yeah, I really like how you said that.
Yeah, and a couple different things that you said there that I want to keep chatting about with you is the understanding of the subconscious mind is what helps us with everything that we're doing. Because I've read this great book before, Psycho-Cybernetics. Okay, Psycho-Cybernetics. And in this book, I forget the author, but you can Google that name, Psycho-Cybernetics. Um, he talks about how the brain really works. And they mainly talk about people that are overweight. What happens is so your subconscious mind is always going. Okay, it never shuts off. So if you've developed a habit over time, then yeah, in the physical world, you may not be doing that thing, but you're always thinking about it without even knowing it. So what happens is the average person will lose weight, 20 pounds, feel good. But your subconscious mind will try to automatically replace that 20 pounds without you even knowing that you're doing it. Because it thinks it's missing something because your mind is constantly going like this. So that's a quick version of it. I would recommend reading that book. But that's just the raw power. What's behind, ultimately I say this computer that's in our heads. And it's understanding how that works, which, realize we're not taught this in school. Why? I don't know. I can probably talk about that for a whole episode. But these are things that we need to learn because it helps us with everything that we're doing. Because that means that we're repetitive learners and we ultimately could learn anything. I really am a believer too that one day when people do start realizing how it works, it will be like in the Matrix when you just like put something in your brain and like all of a sudden you're like learning all these different things at one time. I really think that technology wise we'll catch up to that. And that's what the subconscious is. We naturally can do those things. So yeah, that's my little tidbit on the subconscious mind and quickly how it works.
Yeah, and from saying that, it's like, really pointing to that all addictions start in your mind. It's not that, oh, food is addictive, the food is addictive, or that drug is addictive, or sex is addictive. It's not that. It's that your mind is addictive. I mean, everyone's mind is addictive. The unconscious mind is naturally addictive, because like one thing that we grow up doing is trying to find our sense of identity from the outside. So we try to achieve things, we try to look a certain way, we try to act a certain way, we try to build up a reputation in a certain way, all to like try to, to, to try and build up our image outside of ourselves. And that's just the mind going out and identifying with all these different things. So it's like the mind is really sticky. If you don't watch it, it just like goes and tries to like take that, bring it here, take that, bring it here. So at the end of the day, we all have addictive personalities. Sorry, something happened with we're having internet issues right now, and there's kind of like a glitch right there. I thought I lost everyone.
You're good. You're good.
So we all have addictive personalities, and you could be addicted to anything. Like Ben was saying. Like for me, for example, as Ben lost a lot of weight, I was always naturally skinny. So for me, I was addicted to working out and eating a lot of protein because I had to be not skinny. And I was like always trying to put on muscle. I was eating so much. I was working out so much. I was taking these supplements and all that kind of stuff. So, like, maybe, that would be considered to be a quote unquote good addiction, or maybe like a better addiction than, for example, alcohol. But it was an addiction nonetheless. And I was suffering because of it.
Yeah, completely. And it all goes back to that last word you're saying, the suffering. We're suffering and we're not even realizing it.
Yeah.
And we put ourselves in these positions where, we just we get to addicted to suffering on some level, you know. Um,
That is a great point. That's a
yeah,
great point because when people hear that, they're like, "What? I'm not addicted to suffering. What are you talking about?"
yeah,
But just
but you,
look at people's like addiction to complaining. Look at
mhm.
people's addiction to constantly pointing out what is not working or what's wrong, or constantly talking about their problems, or constantly talking about the pain in their body. That you're just creating more realness of that suffering, and I mean, like, yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of my life doing that too because I thought it was normal. But yeah, that's a really good point. There is a part of us inside that is addicted to suffering because you can build an identity out of being a victim, and that's actually a really morally superior place to be, is to be a victim.
Yep, yep. And we do get stuck in that victim mentality completely. And we have made it okay in this society we live in. We've made it okay to be the victim. And I'm not saying, believe me, there is plenty things out there that people should be a victim in some way, shape, or form. But we have put it on a pedestal that our mindset can be of a victim mentality, and it's okay. All right. No, what would be okay is if we work through that and we understood why we feel that way and what are we going to do about it to feel better and do it in a balanced way and not just go to a place of suffering, victim mentality, and feel bad about ourselves.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I mean, so that being a victim, you're automatically making somebody else wrong, and
Right.
you're like automatically trying to make somebody else feel a lot of guilt and shame. And like, at the same time, obviously it's like 100% disempowering for the person who's in the role of victim. And then neither side can actually do anything that's like really truly beneficial in the world. So yeah, that's definitely something that a lot of people in the world can get out of. And I mean, I'm slowly coming out of that too. I mean, that's a really deep one.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
yeah.
and for me before it was deeper. It's still there. It's always still there. We always have to work through it, right? But I am comfortable in my skin right now to say that when I was 150 pounds big, I was in completely victim mentality. That oh, why don't you cook your own? Why aren't you cooking your own food? Oh, I don't have time. Why aren't you going to the gym? Oh, I don't have time. That's victim mentality. We don't want to
Mm.
call that completely what it is. That was lazy victim mentality. And the best thing that I could have done, and I did, was look in the mirror, call myself out, and go after it of what I'm going to do to get past those feelings, past those emotions, and how deep can I go, and how deep do I need to go to realize that I am being a hardcore addict when it comes to a lot of different things that I'm doing. And that's okay, but I need to fix this. I need to fix this mentality.
Yeah, and I'm sure that and like I'd like to ask you, is like one of the first steps to like breaking an addiction is to admit, yeah, wow, I'm
Yeah.
addicted to this, and like actually bring awareness to the fact that I am addicted to this. It's actually real. So I wanted to ask
Yeah.
you about that, like the, when you had that realization, and like maybe if you can remember when you did admit that, how that changed stuff for you.
Yeah, and it is obviously we're admitting we have a problem, right? Whether it's a bottle, whether it's a pill, whether it's food, we're admitting that we have a problem at the end of the day. And how are we going to fix that problem? Well, you know, for me, when I really realized it and snapped out of it, was it's really simple. I started just doing shit. So I started taking care of myself. I started prioritizing myself. I changed my work schedule around. I made sure I had time to make food. I made my own food. I didn't rely on anybody. I didn't rely on my wife. Okay. I didn't rely on anybody else to make my food. I didn't just order, the pre-cut meals that are perfectly made for you to do, to relieve everything. Okay. Those are great to use to an extent, but I had to learn how to cook. I had to learn how to take care of myself. And then as I started doing it, I realized, and I go back to, it was that simple. It was that easy. I just needed to start doing the work to get there. And instead of just staying stuck, that's when it made me really it really snapped for me of like, oh shit, I can do this. I can do this with everything else going on in my life. I can make the time to make food, go to the gym, and necessarily I don't even need to go to the gym. We can't even go to the gyms right now where we live still. And somehow I can go on a walk, mix it in the fact that, oh, I don't have time to walk today, so I'm going to walk my dog. And it's just how we think of things that we constantly need to move and constantly need to do something. And another great one that I did too, that I picked up from Kevin Smith, who, look him up, amazing dude, comic guy. When I would work, wouldn't sit down. So I would constantly be working and I would be standing, and I would only sit down for like a period of time to take a break and then just keep moving. And that for me was a trippy experience when I did that finally, to realize how lazy we are that we sit down as much as we do. And what I really thought about is, because I go back to, how things really used to be. We didn't used to sit down as much as we sit down now. Like, you really think people used to walk for miles and miles in a given day to get food, get water, do their jobs. Yeah. And now we sit on the computer, we sit down to watch TV, and our bodies can take a lot more than what we actually are intended to, what we actually think about ourselves.
And so, back in the day too, when they did sit, it would be on the ground. Right. And that's totally different. That's totally different, sitting in chairs.
Mm-hmm. And that's, I guess getting back to the original topic, the snap was just realizing I was being lazy. And it really is that simple to get yourself out of it.
Yeah. Simple, not necessarily easy.
Yep.
But yeah, being stuck is a choice. It's just like, maybe doing like an unconscious choice. And like we're talking about before, there's a big part of us that wants to stay the same. I mean, like that kind of like is, the unconscious and habitual mind, and that part of us, we want to stay the same because it's comfortable, it's easy, that we don't need to go out of our comfort zone. So like, as we go for change for any part of our life, we're always going to come up against the part of ourselves that we're going to transform. And that part of us is going to be like, no, wait, don't do that. And they'll start to make up all these stories and reasons why you shouldn't do it, because that part of you wants to survive. Because if you go out and you change your perspective, change your body, do anything that creates change within yourself, you're releasing an old part of yourself. And you could say that part of yourself, is dying, or it's just totally transforming, like a caterpillar to a butterfly. There's no trace of the caterpillar in the butterfly. I don't think, at least. They have the same DNA, but whatever.
Yeah. We'll go with that.
Yeah. But we'll always come up against those thoughts. It's just can we get more skilled at taking those thoughts lightly and not believing them and not being totally under their power.
And I love what you said there too, and it's definitely something I want to backtrack to is the fact that I am saying it's simple, but it's not easy. Because I mean, that's the thing that I'm being truthful and honest about. This was 10 years of figuring it out, of how simple it is. Okay, and so that's not easy, but it's my mindset. It was my mindset of I can't do this. I can't learn how to cook. I can't deal with all these issues. You know, those are things that just held me down. And once I realized how simple it is to get out of it, those are the aha moments you have. But you have to go through years and years of figuring it out before you pick up on all those skills that you're going to learn. You know, I didn't know how to cook. I didn't know how to take care of myself. I had to learn how to do it. And we think everything's just going to magically happen. It's just going to, you know, I see the weight loss commercial and, oh, it's this easy to take this pill and do this. And I think it's magically going to appear. And that's just not the case. You have to work to do it. But now I realize that's with everything that I'm doing. You know, for anyone that tells me like, oh, I don't want to start a business. Okay, why not? You don't want to start a business because you don't want to learn everything that you need to do to start a business. And that goes with any skill, no matter what. And that's what I truly believe, that we can accomplish anything we want. And it sometimes just take us years to do it. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and that also kind of gets us to the topic of like that we're actually not afraid of failure, but we're afraid of success. And that took me, like, I heard Yuki talk about that for so long, and I just couldn't. I'm like, wait, what? I don't get it. Of course, we're afraid of failure, but you know, it goes back. That's an old self. So the old self, you know, the, the that we're breaking away from as we change. That old self is used to failure, so it's like that's okay. I mean, like, you know, I'll give up. That's fine. I won't even do it. You know, which is like another form of failure. But if we like go and we, you know, take the steps and we do the stuff and we actually do succeed, then we've changed into a different person. And that old self that we had at the beginning was like, I can't do that. There's no way I could do that. And I don't want to do it because I'm not going to be there when there's that success. I'm going to be gone. So it's like we're constantly like breaking away from things, you know, as we go and do and change and succeed.
One thing you're saying there is it's not just that we're scared to succeed and not just that we're okay with failure. We're comfortable and used to suffering, and we would rather suffer than deal with the success. And I can understand how that is and how that point of view is, because there would be times like I was always the chubby kid. So once I lost the weight, I actually kind of freaked out. And I went on this spot, this like kind of, I had to check myself of like, who am I anymore? Right? Because that's who I always was used to being, the bigger guy, the chubby guy. And I didn't know necessarily how to navigate a lot of different things. Just simple conversations, I got uncomfortable and weird because I felt like I was a different person, but I wasn't. And I was ultimately, you know, I held on to it so long because I was okay with suffering and not being successful.
And so going right into what you're talking about right there, it reminds me of something you told me. So, okay, most people, you know, we'll just use weight loss as an example because that's Ben's story right now, and because a lot, you know, a lot of people can relate to that. But when people do something like try and lose weight, they don't actually go to the core of what's causing the problem. They just try and lose the weight. They're like, I'm just going to do these things so I can lose the weight. But what put the weight on in the first place is all of their unconscious habits that led them into that place in the first place. So if they don't address that, then like what the, the like Ben was talking about earlier, they'll just put the weight back on because that's where they're conditioned to be. So Ben, you said something to me that like blew my mind, and you said that like as you were losing all the weight and stuff, then your life was changing a lot. I think you said that you kind of expected that losing the weight that to solve a lot of your problems, and then you found yourself that you were still getting like really angry and frustrated, and you're like, why is this happening? I just lost all this weight. And then you realized that there was something else deeper that you had to take into consideration and you had to look at. And I was like, wow. So like in a way, I think you said this too, in a way you were being really really superficial and material because you were just looking to the outward manifestation. You thought that losing the weight was going to bring you happiness, but weight, body, that's just material stuff. And you saw that that really didn't solve the problem at its core.
Yep. And ultimately, what it was is I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. So that gets back to
Mm.
being okay with suffering and everything else. I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. And I thought it was just because I was overweight, when in fact, it was all these other
Yeah.
feelings and emotions and deep rooted behavior that ultimately made me, yeah, it made me eat, but it made me um, do all the other things that it made me do all the other things that I talked about too, just to cope with it and cope with, feeling bad about myself and not thinking I'm good enough. And when I got to that point where I lost the weight, okay, that's when I really realized, because I had all those feelings kind of come up a lot more because I was just focused on losing the weight. Okay. And then once I lost the weight and I figured it out, that's when things just kept coming up more and more and more. And it's really hard
Mm.
to put into words, but the best way to just describe it is I kept having to go within with what was wrong with me. And lots of meditation, lots of other practices that I've done to kind of feel through that anger, frustration, and everything that was built up in there. Because that, on a physical perspective too, you would look at me, I'm 150 pounds big, right? Bigger than what I am now. But what if that's not just in fat and being overweight? What if that's 150 pounds of suffering, feeling bad about myself, bottling everything up? Those are all those feelings that I needed to let go of. And when I really started letting go of those things, that's when the weight started falling off.
Mm.
Is when I really started figuring it out. That's when it fell off. And then as I really, then after I lost the weight and everything, and I would look at myself and realizing more and more, I need to keep doing work because just something isn't completely right, you know? Um, so yeah, I'll pass it back to over to you with that because I feel like I'm slightly ranting with that a little bit.
Oh no, man, I was totally enthralled in what you're saying. um, and I mean, like, if you're listening, like, maybe there is like an obvious addiction in your life, or you're starting to realize that wow, there is a lot more addiction in my life. And just by the way, the, the Ben and I are mindset coaches, so like if you do want like any guidance with this kind of stuff, like making a change in your life or breaking out of some like old mold that you're in, definitely contact us. But so I'll just kind of talk about my story of addiction, and like I'll just talk about maybe like the biggest one, for me. And like I mentioned before, that there's been more too. So, but the biggest one for me was weed. So from about the age of like 19 or 20 until just 2 years ago and a couple months, I smoked weed basically every single day of my life. And like at first, it was really really helpful. Like it really helped me like to relax and socialize, and I like made a lot of friends. I started to trust myself a lot more. But so in that way, I'll say like that weed, that drug was kind of like a tool. It was kind of like a method to help me like grow and find a different part of myself. But I held on to it for way, 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 way too long. And so like I was smoking for basically a good a good like 8 years. Um, then I knew that I knew that it wasn't serving me. Yeah, I knew that for many, many years. And then I the, did a yoga teacher training, and I started to meditate every day, and I would practice yoga, and I became a lot more mindful, of my life and all that kind of stuff. And like I tried to quit a few times. I never really had guidance about it either, because I honestly I never went to anybody and told them that I had this issue. Like I never told any of my teachers because I was embarrassed and I was really ashamed by it. So I didn't seek any help. But what I did was like at some point I just continued to smoke, and I did it consciously. So I like really, really knew that I was smoking. I understood that, wow, I really, really want to smoke right now. And like, that, that, I was totally aware that, yeah, I'm smoking because I don't want to feel how I feel right now. I'm smoking because I want to alter my state of consciousness, because I don't like how my consciousness is normally. Basically, I don't like who I am. So I'm going to smoke, and then I'll get hungry and I'll eat something delicious, and it'll just take me out of it, and then I'll go to sleep easier, and I won't need to worry about that whole business about not being able to sleep right away. So that was all the stuff for me. And so like I was doing that for some time. I like realized that it's not serving me. I was letting go of it more and more and more. And then I learned the transcendental meditation technique, and in 2 months, following that routine, I just lost the craving to smoke. And since then, I haven't smoked. And I didn't try. I didn't like really try hard and be like, okay, you know, May 23rd, 2019 or whatever, I'm going to, it was only like a year ago in a few months, I'm going to stop smoking. It wasn't like that. It was just, I just did my practices, and I was really dedicated to those things. And then it was like that it brought more balance into my life. And then I just lost the craving to do it. And I was like, wow, that was pretty wild. Yeah. And that really showed me that the fight and the struggle isn't as necessary as we think it is.
I love that. And I love that you brought that up, because look, I get it, and I get the perspective of weed, because there's many benefits to it. And I could tell you from my personal experience with it, well, one, I love the benefits of weed, and I think we should be using it more for medicine. Okay, I don't think we are using it enough. But what tripped me out, and I'm coming up on a year of not smoking weed as well. Okay. What tripped me out is I had this kind of perspective one day after I did a meditation, and it was realizing that weed is a medicine. And so I thought to myself, if I was taking Vicodin every day, wouldn't I be addicted to Vicodin? Or if I was drinking a bottle of vodka every day, wouldn't I be addicted to that? So it's not, there's many good benefits to weed. But anytime you're doing something every single day, we have to check in on ourselves if that's really benefiting us. And once I really checked myself, it was very similar to you, Nate, where it was just like, no, I wasn't even setting the date. It was more of like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that today. And then it just kind of kept going. And we've talked about this before too. And I think people will understand this, is the fact that there should be a reason behind everything that you're doing. Okay. So if you're an anxious person and you need that, and that's your medicine, that's a really good reason that you need to be smoking weed, taking an oil with it, everything that goes into that. But if you're just doing it just because you have to do it, then I would recommend that you have to check yourself of what that feeling is with it. And those are the feelings that I've had around it. That's kind of helped me realize that I kind of had a problem with that too. And it was really funny too, because when I actually quit and I stopped, I was telling a friend about it who's known me for years. I was like, hey, I actually ended up stopping. And he goes, how are you doing with that? He goes, what's that like? And I go, I shit you not, I'm reading like 3 books at one time right now. Like, I was like, I like realized this extra time that I was like spending. And I actually replaced it too, because anytime I kind of got a little craving with it, I ended up just doing a meditation. So that's around the time I started doing transcendental meditation too. So that's like going back to what I was saying earlier, is that's just the balance. So it's not that we can't do these things. It's not that we can't have a glass of wine, or we can't smoke some weed, but we have to always check ourselves, and should we be doing it as often as we can? And for me personally, I can't do those things. It doesn't work for me. It's not how my brain works. So I'm going to keep not doing it. But that's kind of the grand scheme of things of how we really should be thinking about everything that we're doing in our lives.
Yeah, definitely. Like, if we can do everything with intention and everything by choice, then that's freedom. It's not doing everything that you want to do, but it's the being able to, like, engage with everything that's happening. And yeah, like, if we're doing something compulsively, that's when it becomes an issue. So it doesn't matter if you smoke some weed, but if you're doing it compulsively, like if you say, if I don't smoke my weed, if I don't have my cup of coffee, I'm gonna have a bad day, then that's
Yep.
doing it compulsively. And like, I still drink my cup of coffee in the morning compulsively, but one day that'll end, I know it. But um yeah, so the, going back to something you said about, like, if you're anxious and you smoke weed, help with your anxiety, then great. I want to talk about a little bit about taking medication. Um, because, okay, medication, nothing wrong with it if it's used in the right way. Okay, I'll make an example. Psychotropic drugs that are used for, these are people who have, quote unquote, mental issues. When they first came out, there was a policy that they couldn't be used for more than, like, I'm just going to throw a number out there, for more than 6 months at a time. Like, after 6 months, discontinue its use. And that is so smart, because it was like they kind of had more more of an awareness that, okay, wait a second, let's use this medication to, like, help, like, lift this person up to a degree where then they can take a step themselves. But if you become addicted to your medication in order to solve some kind of an illness, well, then that's just another addiction. And so many people are addicted to so many health drugs, and just because they're in the health industry, we accept them. But they're so toxic to the physical health and the mental and emotional and spiritual health of people. And it's so nuts how much money is made of those things. But if you could, flip your perspective on what medicine is, it's not a permanent thing. It's something to help create balance. So it's to help create balance. And, like, so I'll bring this analogy that Buddha, said, and he was talking about, maybe he was talking about any practices, I guess, and maybe, I mentioned this before, but it's so good. So he's like, whatever like method or practice, or medicine in this case, that you're doing or taking, think about it like if you have a raft, and you're going to cross a big river, and then you get to the other side of the river, you're going to leave the raft and you're going to walk from there, right? There's no point in, like, carrying the raft and dragging it across land. He's like, that's ridiculous. But we do that with our methods and our practices. It's like, once we cross the river, aka, like, once that thing has brought us to a place where we can now, move on ourselves, we need to let go of that thing, no matter what it is. Let go of it, and then let's see what else life has to give us.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you bring up medicine too, because we use medicine to fix us, but medicine should be used to, what if it's not working? Like, that's the thing. I look at, perfect example for me is I was always pre-diabetic. So if I didn't actually lose weight, then I would have ended up on medicine, and I would have taken it for a good chunk of my life. But here's the thing too. There's a lot of people, not everyone, but there's a lot of people that have diabetes and they just choose to be on medicine instead of losing weight.
Yeah.
So they use the medicine as a crutch. So no matter what it is, you should only be doing it for a period of time. Because that's when, if you're not solving the problem, then you need to try something else to fix it. And, they're going to look back at our society of how we've used medicine and keep poking holes in it for a very long time. Let's just be real here. The way the medical industry is and everything that goes into it, it's all very money driven, and they want you on medicine. And they also make it okay that you're on medicine. And it's okay for a period of time. And what I also will say, that you'll jump right into this, our bodies have the power to heal anything that we are diagnosed with. Anything. Yeah. And if we let them work and go in, we will be amazed of how much we can accomplish.
Yeah. And I mean, again, it shows you the power of the mind. Like, honestly, I don't know. I mean, I've heard some pretty wild stories, and like, I do want to say that we can, heal ourselves of anything, but I'm just not going to say that just because I don't actually know it for sure. But I've heard so many stories about like people, having like the this or that terminal illness, and their doctor telling them, I'm sorry, you have like maybe 2 months to live, and then so this person in this instance took that as a sign to be like, wow, I need to really make the most of the life that I have left. And they drastically changed their mindset, and then their illness went into remission, and it just left. And the doctors are just there like, I have no idea. And this is actually the one reason that brought Deepak Chopra more fully into spirituality is he was working as a doctor in a clinic, at his own clinic maybe, or something like that. And he saw this happening, and he was like, what the hell? This makes no sense. Like, Western medical has no explanation for this except for, I don't know. It's just like, by chance or luck. But Deepak is so smart, and he's like, no. There's something else here. And then, he just like beautifully integrates science and spirituality because of that. So yeah, so much of it lies in our mind. It's crazy.
And you were cutting out a little bit there, Nate, so I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but I would recommend everyone to look up Joe Dispenza if you didn't actually already say it.
Yeah, no, I didn't.
Because, okay, I promise you this, you will be amazed of how much Joe Dispenza has documentation, medical records of countless people healing themselves with terminal illness, addictions, everything, okay? And it just shows that we have the power within. And that's how I am on the journey that I am on it today, is just realizing how much I should love myself and how much I have harnessed that energy that's within me, that's I've been able to accomplish the things that I accomplished today. And so we all have the power to make that shift. No matter how big it may seem, how impossible it may seem, you have the strength and the power to do it.
I love the quote by Muhammad Ali. He's like, the impossible isn't a fact, it's an opinion.
Right.
But yeah, no, so definitely look up Joe Dispenza, if you don't know who that is. But one reason why he's so powerful is because what he does, it started with himself. And he like broke, broke or like shattered some vertebrae in his back. He like broke his back basically. Then he didn't like the answers he was getting from doctors, and he was like, I'm gonna take this upon myself, and he healed himself. So he has such a cool story. I love that guy so much. Another
Yeah.
person who really, really blends in the science and spirituality very well.
Yeah. And I love that too, how you're saying blends the science and spirituality. Is that's what I'll say is I may listen to my doctor, okay? But also, as soon as I'm done listening to my doctor, I'm going to look it up on my own and look up somebody else's opinion. I'm not going to ever just listen to one person. So if somebody's telling you to take a pill, that's fine. Take the pill, but research what's in the pill. Research how else you should be fixing the problem holistically, however else you need to do it, and then blend the two together. And that's where I think people get really distant on like, the hippie culture or, the spiritual culture because they think, oh, that's impossible. That's this, that's that. Just blend the two together. If you have another belief that, medicine works, that's cool, but try something else to go with it and blend it together. And then you're going to have more balance in your life.
Yeah, and like I really don't want to put down doctors or anything, but please don't treat your doctor like God, because so many people treat their doctor like God, and they listen to whatever they say. They don't even question it. They just do it. And I mean, that is trying, and like Ben said, take some other responsibility into your own hands. Just because some person says that you need to take this thing, I mean, it's not set in stone. So, just go and like look for yourself.
Yeah. And I'll mention this too for anyone that is trying to lose weight. Okay. I can tell you too, I worked with a doctor during that time. Okay. And I've had the same doctor the whole way through. And I don't agree with a lot of things that he says. And in fact, there's a lot of things he hates me. He hates having to deal with me of how many questions I ask. Okay. But it's okay because I listen to his opinion and then I try to tell him, okay, well, I want to do it this way. And then he'll backtrack me a little bit. And there's plenty of things that he's right about. We need to listen to doctors, but we need to listen to other people too. Because if I didn't listen to a lot of the spiritual mentors that I have and spiritual friends like Nate, then I wouldn't have been able to keep off the weight. And, that's one thing to remember is we need to trust our doctors and trust a lot of other people's opinions. There's never one way of doing anything. If there is one way of doing everything, then what would life even really be? There'd be no figuring anything out.
Oh, it'd be so boring.
So boring.
Yeah, we also need to trust ourselves. So like I'm starting to grow bonsai trees. So I've been like looking up videos, of how to do it. And I came across this one video. It was this guy. He's like, okay, just 5 things for beginners to like, know as you start your bonsai tree. Yeah, and the first thing is like, don't listen to what other people have to say. He's like, all these people are going to tell you this and you can't do that and this and that. Just do it. And then the second thing he said, listen to what other people have to say. And I was like, this guy is awesome because he knows it's not one or the other. We have to like be able to be open to hearing things, but at the end of the day, like listen to what we really, really feel that is true. And if it's wrong and it ends up being a mistake, that's totally fine because we learn. That's how we learn the absolute most. You learn that fire is hot by feeling how freaking hot fire is. You don't learn by somebody saying, that's really hot, don't touch it.
And I'm gonna recap with this and kind of chime into that. You have to try multiple things to accomplish what you want to do. Okay, and I'll go back to losing weight. I tried many different diets, many different programs, many different exercise routines, and I could tell you, it was not one particular thing that actually helped me lose that weight.
Wow.
It was all of those things.
The journey.
And learning all about it through the course of the journey that helped me lose it and keep it off. Because when I got done, what I decided is what's next? What am I going to do next? What am I going to learn new now about nutrition? What am I going to learn new about an exercise routine? What am I going to do different to keep moving it forward? And that is what life and the journey is really all about.
The journey on, Ben.
Journey on, my friend. I think that's a great place to close, and I'm going to give it back to you. Let's please close us out with an awesome meditation.
Okay, cool. All right, so again, thanks everybody for sticking with us to the end. So we'll just close it off in the same way we started, and just check in with ourselves, with our internal experience, and you can do that by breathing. You could do it by also just simply feeling your body relax, but just some kind of awareness or attention onto your body or your breath. And then whatever you're feeling, whatever your attention is on, see if you can just notice how it continuously changes, how there's a flow. So if you're feeling your breath, notice how the breath is constantly in a cyclic flow. If you're feeling your heart beating, notice how there is a flow with every beat of the heart, continuous. And these things have been going on for your entire life. And we have this idea that once we get to some place, we can just stop. But life doesn't ever stop. And if we can get more in touch with that, maybe just by looking inwards and seeing how this amazing vehicle, the body, actually never stops. Maybe we can just jump into that river and go with the flow of life. Alright, go ahead and just take one more deep breath. Follow the breath all the way. Alright, everyone. Well, again, I thank you so much for being here. I thank you, Ben, for being here and for having just like another awesome conversation. I love talking to you every time.
Thank you, and thank you to everyone listening, and hope you guys all have a wonderful day and enjoy the journey and living with all the little experiences you're going to pick up along the way. So, Sending you lots of peace and love.
Peace and love, everyone.